I grew up with a car dad, as in a dad who likes cars, not as in an automotive that acts as my father, and with that came going to a lot of antique car shows, where all the white men with classic vehicles gather around to sit in parking lots, eat greasy food, and peek into each other's rides, all while my father consistently reminds me that I am not to say anything bad about anybody's car in case they are close enough to hear me. When looking around at those parking lots as compared to the parking lots of modern day, the differences in color, body style, and variety are immediately obvious. When did the roads get so gray? How did we let that happen? The history of mass-produced vehicles is a short one, beginning just over 110 years ago with Henry Ford's Model T. In the early 1900s, cars were essentially motorized carriages, and thus the painting methods used were derived from the same oil-based coating formulas. It was complicated, it was expensive, and the drying time took several weeks, but that's not the only reason why there were no color options. It was mostly because the lack of a good binding agent made it so that any color besides black would quickly fade in the sun and eventually yellow. And in the sun, the car would sit. Garages weren't really all the rage in a world without cars. Ford eventually moved on to using asphalt-baked enamels, which, because of the asphalt used, could only be created in really dark colors. It wasn't until after World War I that new methods of painting emerged using Chinese wood oil or tung oil, which hardens quickly upon exposure to air, therefore allowing for not only faster drying times, but also for colors. But the tung oil required a level of upkeep that the average consumer was not going to keep up with. Without yearly maintenance, the oil would break down and become really susceptible to scratching and water damage. The early 1920s brought a collaboration between General Motors and the DuPont Chemical Company, and they were able to create something called pyroxylin, a substance that can be mixed with a whole rainbow of colors to achieve weatherproof, fade-proof, bright colors. Imagine how gagalicious it was when General Motors brought out these painter's tape blue cars at the New York Auto Show. And blue was a very deliberate choice in the display, as blue was the most difficult color to produce prior because it would fade the quickest to yellow in the sun. These cars are called the True Blue Oakland 6s and sell for around $25,000 today, which is about equal to how much they cost back in the day when considering inflation. Talk about a car that retains its value. You just can't drive it more than 1,000 miles a year or you are breaking some major laws. If it'll even go 1,000 miles a year. Henry Ford, a sort of notorious grump, was not happy with these changes and was quoted as saying, "Any customer can have a car painted any color that he wants, so long as it is black." But just spouting off at the mouth wasn't really enough for Henry. He also decided to void the warranties on any Model Ts that had been custom painted any other color but black. He felt that he had spent so much time working on the production of his cars that like messing with a good thing would just be stupid. But joke's on him. No one wanted his stinky cars anyway, because the 1920s brought around a lot of competition in the automotive industry, and everybody was trying something new to try and catch the public's attention. We had red Alfa Romeos, a forest green Citroen B12, haunting Rolls-Royce Phantom, and even this one, which I mistakenly referred to as the Humpmobile. Lincoln specifically turned it out with their bird and butterfly models, which featured up to 4 different colors per car, and the price reflected it. These Lincoln Club Roadsters cost about $4,500 in 1928, a 500% increase from the price of the Model T just 20 years prior. Creativity was flowing, business was booming, but then you'll never guess what happened in 1929. Suddenly, all the cars start looking like Haunted Mansion-style hearses again, except for the Humber Pullman, which looks so saucy in plain black and chrome that I can't even say anything about it. But really, it isn't black cars that I have an issue with. It's gray. The cars of 1931 are gray, gray, and gray. How dare you have a colorful car when the banks are closing? If the cars of the 30s happened to be colorful at all, they at least had a black fender to help tone down the look. The black fender has now become standard across the industry, as it's a lot easier to patch up when it gets dinged or scratched. Ask me how I know. Okay, I have backed into the trash can enough times to know that maybe having a black bumper wouldn't have been the worst thing for me. Despite the diving economy, the 1930s brought about the invention of metallic car paints, which were very, very, very expensive to make and reserved for the elite. It took about 40,000 herring to make 1 kilo of paint, which wasn't even enough for 1 full layer. Most of the herring scales were obtained as a byproduct from the food industry, which is actually a very sustainable choice, but fish scales biodegrade, which is a word that we usually think of really, really positively, unless of course it is biodegrading on your car which you are currently driving and not really ready to biodegrade yet. But truly, metallic paint didn't really have enough time to catch on before it was time for all the men to go to war again. The 40s saw a rise in the chrome trim again, and oh my god, the chrome is so sauce. It was durable, corrosion resistant, and very visually striking, but as always, there is a catch. The materials used in chrome plating are extremely toxic, not only to the people who are manufacturing the cars, but also the people who live in the area around the factory. Chrome-6 is a highly toxic heavy metal pollutant with a tendency to enter waterways. It is a known carcinogen mostly linked to lung, nasal, and sinus cancers, and once it's in the water and soil, it stays there for decades. So, hot, sexy cars, the health of the lower class. It's tough. It's tough. The 1950s is really where we see car sales skyrocket. At this point in American history, consumption was seen as a patriotic duty, which might sound a little bit funny to us now, but let me explain. In 1950, 30 to 35% of Americans worked in factory manufacturing, and although conditions were tough, most were making what we would consider a livable wage today. For a white man working in an urban factory, one income could feed and clothe a family of 4, as well as purchase a home and a car comfortably. By purchasing mass-produced items, you were directly supporting the work of your friends and neighbors. On the contrary, in 2026, only 3.65% of Americans work in factory manufacturing. They typically make just over minimum wage, and the only people truly profiting from their hard work are not themselves, but rather looming CEOs who do half as much work as their underlings. You think I'm exaggerating? Well, the average Amazon factory worker makes about $20 an hour, which is about $41,000 a year, making them lower class earners. Meanwhile, the average Amazon executive makes $235,000 a year, a difference of 470%. And Bezos makes, take a guess. You won't be right, I bet. 11 million% more than that of the executives. Anyway, because that's, we all, you know. Car sales rose exponentially in the 1950s, so we get some of the most baller colors of all time. I'm talking butter yellows and rich baby blues, electric teals and plum purples, pistachio greens and muted pinks. And not just the exteriors, nay, nay. Beautiful, beautiful interiors to match. Like this 1957 Chevrolet Corvette, orange interior with chrome detailing, or this really green 1954 Buick Skylark with ribbed leather seats, or perhaps I could interest you in the cherry maroon Fiat 8V with an orange wheel. I am not a car girl. Far from it, but I am an artist, and it is refreshing to see so much effort and thought being put into the design of everyday objects. This is what we can do when artists are brought onto the team, when they are trusted and given more free range, and when they are paid appropriately. The 1960s is the first time that we really see television becoming a big part of the automotive industry. Cars like the Mystery Machine and the Batmobile were characters in their own right, and helped shape the personality traits and stereotypes that we still associate with these cars today. The Volkswagen Beetles and buses are for hippies. Sleek black sports cars scream dangerous, while red sports cars ooze sensuality. Trucks are for working people. Minivans are for moms, Jeeps are for adventurous folks, Subarus are for lesbians, and so on and so on and so on. It's a video. 60s cars retained the same variety as the 1950s cars, but in richer, more vibrant colors with a heavy emphasis on reds, oranges, and yellows. Teal also had its time in the sun, but we kind of let go of pinks and purples for the most part. Cadillac tried to bring back the powdery pink of the 50s with their 1960 Cadillac Series 62, but it just didn't really catch on. And oh my god, perhaps the most gagalicious, wig-worthy car of this video is another Cadillac attempt at giving purple its chance. The Heather Pauley Eldorado Seville from 1960. It is neither masculine nor feminine. It is gender-defying purple gorgeousness both inside and out that now fetches prices of up to $100,000. Unlike the pink, the purple Seville started somewhat of a micro trend with icy metallic purples. Chevrolet released the factory color Evening Orchid on a handful of their models in 1965, along with Iris Mist from Pontiac. Ford brought us Purple Orchard Metallic, which was available on special order on Mustangs, and Lilac Frost, which was available on Thunderbirds as one of their 9 special colors offered in 1969. These colors were exceedingly rare, and very few of them still exist. Also in 1969 came the release of Chrysler's high impact colors, which, unlike competitors, could be put on practically any of their models and only cost buyers an additional $15. Colors like Panther Pink, Sassy Grass, and Top Banana are widely sought after, but nothing has amassed a cult following quite like Plum Crazy, with some of the purple Barracudas selling for upwards of $350,000. The shift from the acidic, synthetic, youthful colors of the 1960s to the warm, earthy, kind of down-toned colors of the 70s was pretty directly influenced by the oil crises of the decade. The oil crisis of 1973 and the oil crisis of 1979 both brought about a more ecological mindset. Conflict in the Middle East triggered interruptions in oil exports, resulting in huge lines at the gas pumps, fuel rationing, and declining living standards, but also an encouragement to save energy by lowering thermostats, turning off holiday lights, and setting stricter speed limits, and investing more in energy-efficient, smaller cars. With no catalytic converters, cars made prior to 1975 were essentially just massive pollution machines emitting high levels of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. We were thinking more and more about the Earth and our impact, so in came cars with colors that better blended into the natural world and distracted us from the fact that the cars were a big part of the problem. Brown, beige, and green were in. Well, as long as we're talking about 1971, 72, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, or 9. 1976 marked the Bicentennial, or the 200th anniversary of the founding of the United States. And the most popular car colors of that year were, of course, red, white, and dark blue. Following the peak of disco in the late 70s, the 1980s brings back metallic paints, this time with more silvers. And unfortunately, that's sort of the only notable change. Suddenly, we're looking at red, blue, black, white, silver, and the very occasional yellow or green as their one, like, crazy color. Man, sometimes we don't even get red in the mix. And don't even get me started on pinks and purples, because they don't have them. I flipped through the 80s automotive color catalog with tears in my eyes, bro. And as if the exterior colors weren't bad enough, look at these interiors. The companies that were making these interiors just a few decades prior are now making these. Like, I know you're not getting a stain out of there. The longer the decade goes on, the sadder the paint colors get, until we kind of lose yellow and green too. What's black, white, red, and blue all over? These cars. You want a purple car? Forget about it. You want a pink car? Well, you better start selling Mary Kay like your life depends on it. Driving one of these bad boys is going to cost you about $100,000 in sales, and Barbara from down the street has already scammed the entire neighborhood, so you're gonna have to start from across town. Throughout the 80s, cars began looking really uniformly blocky and rectangular, and that carries through to the 90s. I've called this type of car ferret cars for my entire life, and I don't really care if it makes sense to you because it makes perfect sense to me. Ford Taurus, ferret. Honda Accord, ferret. Toyota Camry, ferret. And I know deep down in my heart that if I was shown each of these pictures individually and not one after the other, I would 100% think that they were all the same car. For the second decade in a row, red, blue, and neutrals have dominated the market. The only real standout color from the 90s that I can identify immediately as a 90s vehicle is that dark teal, specifically if it's on a minivan. The teal didn't discriminate. They put that thing on trucks, cars, SUVs, from Toyota to Honda to Dodge, Chevrolet to Suzuki to Ford. You just can't go wrong with the weird, swampy teal. As for the pink cars, the options are limited, but brace yourselves because the options are there. Chevrolet offered the color Raspberry Metallic on their S-Series trucks and Blazers from 1993 to 1995, and like, oh my God, look at this thing. It's giving being picked up from elementary school. It's giving stale cigarette smell. It's giving decades old McDonald's fries stuck between the seat. It's giving soccer practice and zebra print and hair feathers and cup holders with a bunch of brown, stucky, nasty stuff in them. A thing of beauty. Truly, they just don't make them like this anymore. Porsche also offered a ruby stone red, and a few years later, Pontiac offered their Sunfire in a version of raspberry, which is more subtle. And I saved the best for last because purple is so back. If you have $1 million. The 1991 Lamborghini Diablo in Voila for their 50th anniversary, 1992 Chevy Camaro in Purple Haze, the 1993 Porsche Boxster 986, 1995 dark purple Chevy Corvette, and the Plymouth Prowler that was produced in exclusively purple in 1997. Starting in the 70s and becoming fully realized in the 90s is the idea that not every color is appropriate on every car. The idea of a chartreuse Ford F-150 is laughable, but that exact same color on a Mustang looks perfectly at home. In fact, pretty much any color is considered doable on a sports car. And I have thoughts. The purchase of a very expensive and somewhat impractical car is always, at least in part, a show of status. Ferrari, Lambo, Porsche, BMW, these aren't the names of a first car. This is typically something that you work towards and save up for a long time. And the likelihood that you're going to have more than 1, 2, or 3, if you're really lucky, vehicles of these kinds in your lifetime is very low. All this to say, when you buy a sports car, you intend to keep it for a long time. And if you're gonna spend that kind of money, you might as well spend a little extra and get exactly what you want. You, who may have only owned gray vehicles up until this point, wants a bright orange Mustang because you want people to see your Mustang. Your Mustang is a reflection of your personality. And this isn't to say that a ridiculously huge Ford F-150 isn't also a status symbol, it's just a different kind. This massive toddler running over machine may cost you more than the median United States salary, but at least everyone in town will know how big, giant, manly, and hardworking you are. Oh boy, it's editing Miranda coming at you from my impractical status vehicle. We're sitting at 250,000 miles. I have to say a prayer every single time I start this car that it doesn't just sort of spontaneously combust, but if anybody even brings up the idea of me getting a new car, I cry. I refuse to buy a vehicle that I consider lame, okay? I would rather drive Donovan until his wheels fall off. One time I drove Donovan from Missouri to New York and he actually made it. And then on the way back, he broke down in Ohio, the transmission went out and I had 2 birds, 3 tortoises, and a lizard in the car. I've only ever driven the one car, so I've had Donovan for 10 years. And between the ages of 16 and 26, there is a lot to be insecure about. But one thing that I was never insecure about was my car. Just had to put this in for anyone who knows me. Listen, I'm aware that I'm talking about myself, okay? Me and Ford F-150 drivers are really not all that different. The colors of early 2000s cars reflected the tech-forward, modern aesthetic of the time. Specifically, I believe the rollout of early iPods, iPhones, and MacBooks inspired the desire for clean black, white, silver, and of course, the terrible metallic beigey gold. I'm not sure who was the first to slap this color on a car, but I would love to have a chat. Gold cars statistically have the fastest rate of depreciation of any other color of car. And for good reason. It's just terrible. But the thing is, everyone did it. Daily drive cars, luxury SUVs, trucks, my mom's Tahoe that she totaled with me inside. And even worse, the gold cars often had tan interiors, which I do not understand at all. I could see people going for gold and thinking luxury. But what is luxurious about the flesh tone seat? Maybe like a rich brown or like a sleek black could have elevated the look, but this is terrible. And once again, you're never gonna get the stain out. The paint codes of 2000 through 2003 are not that terrible. It's mostly neutrals with a few interesting options, but 2004 is a big standout year in a we are so back type of way. Full rainbows of colors over the entire spectrum of car prices. Creativity was thriving everywhere as excitement with digital experimentation grew. We were headed towards an eclectic, maximalist future of design until something crazy happened in 2008. With the housing market crash and the general financial crisis of the 2000s, you have companies that are using absolutely every cost-cutting measure to try and skirt by. A few manufacturers like GM and Chrysler even filed for bankruptcy in 2009. Every option you add in manufacturing makes makes the process more complicated, and complications are expensive. Each car has to pass through a paint station before it can be assembled, and if a company offers a whole rainbow of colors, the paint station has to switch between colors more often, and the equipment has to be clean between each color, which means more employees, although not really anymore, as most car manufacturers are using self-cleaning robots to do the paint, but I digress. But more colors does mean managing more paint, which means larger facilities, which means more money. And as we learned during COVID, once a company learns that they can give you less and charge you more, they're not likely to change their behavior once things go back to normal. And maybe you think I'm being overdramatic or exaggerating. So let's review the most popular cars of the last 10 years and the colors that they come in. The humble Nissan Sentra, which of course comes in white, other white, as well as gray, brown gray, black gray, very upsetting red, sexy red, painter's tape blue, and a color which they have so creatively named super black. The Toyota Tundra, which comes in 4 shades of gray, white, black, green, blue that looks black in the shade, red, toilet poo-poo brown, and their one like risky color, hunter orange. Up next is the Kia Sportage, which, let's see, comes in 11 colors. So hopefully we'll have something a little interesting. 2 whites, 3 blacks, 3 grays, red, blue, and a green that is so gray that I'm actually gonna call that 4 grays. Clearly, you've never been to the friggin' jungle, bro, because that's not friggin' jungle queen. That's friggin' gray. And the Honda Accord, a true classic for high schoolers everywhere, comes in 2 grays, white, black, red, and blue. By far, the least represented colors in the automotive industry are pink and purple. I wonder why. Of course, the first reason that comes to mind is that pink is for freaking girls and cars is for boys. But I think it's more complicated than that. I don't think it's just men straying away from this color. Raise your hand if you were a middle schooler who claimed that you hated the color pink because it made you different from other girls and therefore way cooler. I hated pink because I wanted to be strong. I wanted to be taken seriously. And I was taught just by living in the world that liking or wearing the color pink could make me appear weak or girly. It's not so much what the color is, it's what the color represents. Weakness, childishness, and fragility. With 98% of pink car drivers being female, driving around in a pink vehicle is like a giant blinking sign that the person who owns the car, who is in the car, is a woman, which I don't think it's crazy to think that that has the potential to be dangerous. In fact, there are entire subreddits full of women sharing stories of the increased harassment they have faced both online and on the road since owning their pink vehicle. But not every maker, or I guess every model, has fallen victim to the gray apocalypse. The now discontinued Chevrolet Spark and VW Bug both came in a full rainbow. The Mini Cooper, Fiat 500, and Jeep Wrangler are also on the small list of cars that have offered every color. More on them in a minute. I've been trying to puzzle out why these types of cars seem to have escaped the usual rules, but my results have been really varied. All 5 cars are made in completely different countries where the most popular car color varies. At first I thought it had something to do with the average age of the drivers, but turns out it actually just lines up with the worldwide average. So then I started looking into the percentage of men versus women that own the cars, and like maybe there's something there, but the Jeep numbers really threw me off. And I include this inconclusive data because I'm hoping that maybe one of you knows something that I don't. I would love to hear your thoughts and ideas about why you think these specific models seem to defy the like sports car rule. Please tell me. I hope that maybe I'm just being really dumb and maybe the answer is obvious. But Jeep Wranglers specifically have one of the widest color options in the business, with colors like Mojito Green, Rain Purple, Hydro Blue, Firecracker Red, High Velocity Yellow, Juice Orange, and even multiple shades of pink. This being said, white, black, and gray still make up 70% of all Jeep sales, which I do have, again, more thoughts on. At this point in our economic climate, I think it's safe to say that the vast majority of people who are purchasing a brand new car at this point are in the higher upper rungs of society, and as we all know, rich people have bad taste. I don't want to hear about it in the comments, it's just true. But obviously that's not really tapping into the issue. Firstly, colorful cars often cost more money. If you want to get pink on a Jeep rather than black, white, red, or blue, you're going to be paying $859 more. And even more than that, the typical dealership will usually only have one or two of the fancy colors because they are considered risks for the business. It's hard to know if someone in your area is going to want the electric lime Jeep, so they just buy a bunch of white because surely that'll go to somebody. And on top of that, on top of that, on top of that, neutral colors are also easier to resell. But note the word easier here. They sell faster, not for higher prices. In fact, colorful cars often sell for more down the line, especially yellow, orange, and purple, while brown and gold are shown to sell for the least. And for a moment, if I may, I would love to go on my soapbox about resale value and why I try my best not to give a hoot. We presently live in a world where so much of what we spend money on is not ours. We pay rent every month to live in homes that we cannot customize beyond a few posters or pictures put up with command strips. We pay for subscriptions to watch movies and TV that may or may not be there next time we log on. Rather than owning physical albums, we pay indefinitely for music on an app that continues to raise their prices without improving quality. I buy audiobooks, but at the end of the day, I don't actually own them. I can't lend them to a friend or sell it to a book reseller when I'm finished. I think as we head further into this world where we own nothing, we are less inclined to customize, less inclined to do what we want because we are thinking about the person who's going to have the car after us, but all they're going to be thinking about is the person that's going to have the car after them. Cars depreciate literally the minute the key is in the ignition. They are not good investments. And here in the United States, we have set ourselves up for failure as far as transportation goes. We convince ourselves that building 5-lane highways rather than high-speed trains or subways is better because cars give us independence, because cars represent individual freedom, but we are losing that part of cars as well. The decline of colorful cars is, at its core, a story about economics. The consumer desire for self-expression means nothing to the car manufacturer's risk management strategies. And having less fun and more discipline is increasingly seen as more sophisticated. Customize your car the way you want, keep things colorful, put more art into the world. A car is one of the very few things that you own. Make it yours. Okay. See you guys next time. In my Jeep mobile. And by all means, get a gray car if gray is your favorite color. Just don't get a gray car because it's like what you're supposed to do. But also if gray is your favorite color, I don't know what I think about you, but